And folks, we are live. I'll bring our special guest on in just a minute. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. I definitely reached out into the audience with a direct email to the reluctant holdouts within the community with Bitcoin, because I think today's topic is going to kind of demonstrate that this is becoming more about technology than just about Bitcoin as something you buy and hold. And is Bitcoin enabling the technology that kind of matches up with the segment I did last week on Thursday about the new Gulch is using technology to hide in plain sight and to build things in an uninterruptible, uncensorable way. My guest today is going to talk to us all about that. He's an awesome dude and a co-founder of Geyser, which is an app that is enabling cross-border, uncensorable crowdfunding. Just real quick before I bring him on, though, I want to let you guys know about our sponsor of the day today. Recently, I added John Bush as a sponsor, and he's got a really cool offer for you guys today in the realm of homesteading, which is a big topic here at the Survival Podcast and the Bitcoin Breakout. He's putting on an online seminar. That means you can attend without actually leaving your house. It's $57, and it is about budget homesteading. John and Rebecca Powers are going to be covering stuff like how to grow pounds of fresh organic food and eat year-round, whether you live on a tenth of an acre suburban homestead or even a cramped apartment, buying high-quality food your family loves at bargain prices at selected stores online and offline, where to shop, what to buy, tricks to use, and more. Strategically stocking and prepping enough food to feed you and your family during a blackout, a riot, storm, you name it, eliminating debt, slashing expenses. Best part of all is if you get your ticket before this Friday, you also get two awesome bonuses: a workshop with Marjorie Wildcraft on how to grow half your food in your own backyard, and a workshop from Paul Wheaton on the SKIP program. Of course, Paul is also a sponsor, so many of you guys are familiar with him. With that, I want to go ahead and bring our special guest on. And I don't want to butcher your last name, Mick. Mick Morucci, is that how I say it? Because I hate when somebody says my last name wrong, but Mick Morucci, co-founder of Geyser, welcome to the Survival Podcast and the Bitcoin Breakout, bro.
Oh, man, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure and honor to be on it.
I honestly found out about you guys, and I think this is really interesting in where kind of layer 3 tech and apps are going, is it's less competition and more collaboration between different entities instead of everybody trying to like grab their own piece. I think everybody in this world has figured out like the more we do together, the more we build everything, the better for everyone, the rising tide in all boats. Because I was using the Breeze app as part of the Value for Value network for podcasting. And I was like, I found their little point of sale app in there. I was like, that's really cool. And then I realized that they were like taking partners and nesting other apps in theirs. And I found Geyser. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, because for a very long time, I've been saying Bitcoin will eat everything. And I knew it would, but I didn't know how. And Lightning has evolved to where like now I see it's good. Like it is the apex T-Rex in the room. And one of the things I said that it would eat would be crowdfunding. And when I saw you guys were doing, like, this is amazing. And so I want to get deep into what Geyser can do with crowdfunding, cross borders, uncensorable. But can we start off with how, because I find everybody in this space, some point has their Bitcoin Genesis personal block, right? You got involved with Bitcoin. How and why did you get involved with Bitcoin in the first place, Mick?
Oh, yeah, that's the Genesis story question. It's always interesting. For me, it was, I guess, alongside what a lot of other people say. I first heard about it in 2010 in university when a friend of mine invited me over to his dorm saying, hey, Mick, we're here with a friend. Let's buy some Bitcoin. And I said, what the hell is this thing? I'm not interested. And so I rejected that offer regretfully. And then, it kept on popping up here and there once in a while. And then I rediscovered it when some friends mentioned that I thought were, trustable sources, and really made me kind of think, okay, actually, I don't know enough about this to really have a good say on it. And that's when I started going down the rabbit hole, doing the research. And for me, it clicked quite quickly, actually. My background is in anthropology and economics. So having studied both helped me get this sort of, first of all, this understanding that like no discipline knows truth. Like everyone's trying to figure it out, and actually every single discipline on its own, taken as like a face value, will probably be wrong on a lot of things. And so with that multidisciplinary kind of background in mind, I was, I think, a lot more flexible to understanding, okay, let's assess what this other this other entirely new system is saying about the world and reality. And that's what Bitcoin is, really. It's an entirely new beast. And so I think because of that, I was quite open to it. And to me, economics always had a lot of gaps. I was never very happy and satisfied with a lot of the answers. Bitcoin, I learned more about money. What is money? How does money work? Just by studying Bitcoin and studying economics. So yeah, I felt like, okay, well, this is next level shit. And that's where I looked into, that's where I met the community on Twitter, that through memes and GIFs were able to explain Bitcoin better than PhD level textbooks. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of how I got started in it. And then I was working in the realm of user experience design for like a good 5 years in the fintech space and also crypto. I then moved over to, and I was always like a Bitcoiner, but also like playing around with other cryptocurrencies as well. And even ended up working for an Ethereum kind of company, looking at what they were doing, which was a really good kind of startup experience. But also kind of realize, okay, this is actually not really for me. I think what Bitcoin is doing is so much more foundational. So it's so important for civilization itself that, okay, I think really needs to be something here. So I started working on this project around 2 years ago. Well, actually a year ago. 2 years ago, I met my co-founder. Stadios was not here at the moment, but and together, sort of, we decided to kind of jump in this endeavor, and kind of realizing how old crowdfunding is, how hasn't really innovated at all, and what Bitcoin enables is so powerful that we could really there could really be something here for us. And so, yeah, this is essentially how Geyser eventually started. And also, I think a key other component of Geyser was the Lightning Network. Just seeing how sophisticated, how much growth is happening in Lightning, really made us think, okay, this is actually the right time to start building, like you said, like third layer solutions on top of Lightning.
It sounds like me, you came through with some altcoin stuff along the way, and for me, I kind of got drugged kicking and screaming away from it. Every time an innovation in Bitcoin showed up, like, well, here's this 9,000 altcoins that now no longer have a use case scenario. And as Lightning matured over this last year, it pretty much killed everything with any use case whatsoever, in my opinion, other than maybe like the complete total ultra privacy coin for privacy transfer of wealth between individuals. And I think we're getting more and more privacy tools in Bitcoin. But do you feel that other cryptos at this point even matter? And what do you feel makes Bitcoin different from like what we call cryptocurrency? Because I think most people have kind of like tried to blur those two together. And I think that the Bitcoin space is emerging with, we're Bitcoin, we're not cryptocurrency, we're Bitcoin.
Yeah, 100%. So I think you're absolutely right. We came out of a good, well, that's been like 10 years, right? But like the whole crypto kind of growth has existed, well, since the very, very beginning. But it has, like, if you look at the number of coins being created every year, it's kind of been a little bit like an exponential curve. But actually this year, 2021, was it 2021, had the same number of cryptocurrencies being created as 2020, or actually it was just slightly higher. But so what you're seeing is now is like this sort of plateauing of, okay, we've like the kind of, I think there's a realization happening. But in terms of the, I think a lot of that growth is probably just a sign of the fact that if you look at what Bitcoin is an open system, it's an open protocol. And so it's super easy to just take that and copy paste that and maybe change some design decision of Bitcoin and try to like maybe apply those different parameters or criteria to a different use case. The problem is that what we're solving here for is the use case of money. And the money is something that has to be incredibly simple. I think I've heard it once described as like a sphere. Like money has to be a sphere because it can be reutilized in so many different ways. Versus imagine playing football or soccer with a square. That's not going to work very well. So like you get out. So that's why if you think about spheres and balls are used in so many different sports because they're so usable. They're so usable in so many different contexts and scenarios, right? And nobody plays a game with a square, and right. And so money has to be something incredibly simple, verifiable, transparent, and predictable. And so what a lot of these other cryptos try to do is that they try to win on other features like complexity, when actually what you end up doing there is actually end up in a race to make it ever more complex to find that use case that never comes. And I think that's the problem with Ethereum. But I think the biggest problem of all of them is like, well, first of all, as I just said, they're all trying to scramble for a use case when actually Bitcoin has nailed it from day one, which is a crazy thing to say because who the hell gets things right on the first?
You're allowed to say
fuck
on
right?
here, just so you know.
Okay. Sorry, I'm.
Okay,
cool.
You don't have to, but if you feel like
I won't.
you let it flow.
I won't. No, but it's so, right. It's just so
the full beauty of the English language at TSM. Go ahead.
Let's do that. I like that. Uncensored. I like it. So, but you know what I mean? Like it's just so bizarre to think that on the first go, it would come up with something so simple and yet so right. And so everyone's trying to win on different criteria, and in doing so, kind of failing because what we're talking about here is like a foundational layer of truth. There's a second element of it where everyone else is losing, and it's just the proof of work. Like proof of work is such a key element of Bitcoin because it creates this system in which it doesn't matter how many Bitcoins you have, you cannot change the rules. If you have 99% of the Bitcoins, you still cannot change the rules because it's based on just the computational power, the energy that gets computed to secure the network, to validate the transactions. And so something like Bitcoin is like pretty much all of the hashing power that gets used by miners is going into Bitcoin, which makes every other blockchain out there a lot less secure because people are just not verifying Ethereum and other cryptos, proof of work cryptos, because of the fact that less miners are actually mining it. This is why Ethereum is trying to move to proof of stake because they kind of have to, otherwise they're screwed. And then the third key element that for me was critical is just seeing the state of these what are called layer twos, right? So like going back a few years, I think with the block wars of 2017, when the Bitcoin blockchain split into two with Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash, or Bcash, due to the fact that people wanted to make more transactions, and so they wanted to double the block size, right? So the whole learning there was just the fact that you don't want to be moving the goalpost every few years just because you need a little bit more space in the block size. The key learning there is that the blockchains don't really scale. Like the blockchain is just this truth system, this truth machine that just essentially is used as a sort of very basic settlement layer. And what you need to make this into a scalable system that can be used not just 2 times by factor of 2, by a factor of millions, is the secondary layer solution. And if you look at what Bitcoin is doing with Lightning, it's at a completely different degree of complexity and robustness than what's being done in other chains. So if you look at what's happening with Bitcoin layer 2 Lightning, it's a system that is interoperable with all these players. So there are at least three key builders' executions of the Lightning Network, like LND, C Lightning, Eclair, and they all speak to each other. If you look at Ethereum, you have all these L2, layer 2 solutions that don't speak to each other. So it's like these are like closed systems. Not only that, but Ethereum layer 2s have their own tokens. So essentially, they are blockchains on top of blockchains. So you're not building a robust system that can scale. So what you're getting actually is a layer 2 that ends up with high number of transactions, and therefore costly transactions, slow transactions. It's not scalable. So what you have with Bitcoin and with Lightning is a very, very robust system to create these this what's called a transactional layer. Like Bitcoin and the blockchain is a sort of truth settlement layer, and that is very slow, but is reliable. And then on top of that is where you build these systems that are transactional for like
your
everyday
actual
payments
payment
and
network is not the base layer; it's a layer on top of it. Which, to me,
Exactly.
if you think about it, in any other monetary instrument, we've never expected the monetary instrument to be the only payments network. So even if you look at fiat and cash, like it can be its own network because I can meet you and you could say you want a coffee from my store and you give me a $5 bill and I give you 50 cents back, right? And that, in a way, that's a monetary network. But
Absolutely.
to make fiat really move, they created like the legacy payments network, like the 1950s Visa MasterCard payment network. And they're not the same thing. One is a layer on top of the other, right? When we look at Bitcoin, the beauty with Bitcoin is it's programmable money. And we want people to be able to take risks, to innovate, to do new things. Sometimes those new things won't work. So by having a layered approach, you can do something really radical. And if it doesn't work, Bitcoin doesn't care. And somebody else can build a technology that will work. And it preserves and protects the immutability of the base layer of the network, which is Bitcoin. And if you look at something like Bitcoin Cash, which basically that's like securing your lock hash with the Cheeto today with the freaking hash power it has. If it ever did the amount of transactions it touts itself as being able to be, you'd have to buy a new 2 terabyte freaking hard drive every month for eternity to be able to continue to run your own node. Where with Bitcoin, it's scaled, it's done exactly what it's supposed to do. And just as if I went to a bar, like I'm going to a Bitcoin meetup tonight, we're going to go to a bar. I'm going to open a tab and I'm going to close it at the end of the night. I'm not going to pay for every single individual transaction. There's going to be a security mechanism, which is going to be my fold card that I'm going to earn sats on, right? And that's going to be to the bartender that I've never met before. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know I'm going to pay my bill. I'm going to open a channel, and then at the end of the night, I'm going to close the channel. And if you start thinking about it that way, Lightning makes perfect sense. And then you move on. Like, we're not going to get into this because it's not really your world so much, I don't think anyway. But, Lightning can use Bitcoin to move dollars across the world in seconds. Like, once you get there, then it all starts to really gel into, like, these other currencies, if they're even, you call them currencies, they're like tokens for partial ownership in a technology. It's more, I don't like to use legalistic words, but they're unregistered securities. That's what they are. And Bitcoin is its own kind of thing with its own immaculate conception.
Absolutely. And I think the key test of that is, can you shut them down? And I'd be curious to see. I think a lot of the companies, cryptos out there that declare themselves to be decentralized are, as they say, dinos, decentralized and name only. If you really would go there, what would happen if the government was to say, okay, shut down the Ethereum Foundation, shut down the Solana Foundation,
right? If you have a CEO, you're not decentralized. If a small number of people can change everything about your project because they decided to, you're not decentralized, right? So I do think some of the forks maybe, they're not as good. They're not going to make it, but they're not Ethereums or Cosmoses or whatever, right? They're not a company, but any company can be. I'm not saying it will, but it can be. If there's a building with a name on it and you exist here, right, then we can shut you down. Ethereum could shut down any token built on Ethereum. The Ethereum Foundation could just decide they don't like it and turn it off. Like, we know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of echo, I think something that's super really important is just the fact that if you look, you have to kind of look at what exists today, right? And if you look at the current financial system, and Nick Bhatia, who wrote Layered Money, explained this incredibly well. But it's very much a type of tiered kind of cake, kind of layered approach,
Hmm.
where if you look at Fedwire, which is like the layer zero of the current system, where the Fed essentially gives out money, lends out money to private banks. That's called Fedwire, and it actually has a similar latency to Bitcoin. So it sends out a payment every roughly 10 minutes. So
Interesting.
that's the type of thing that's like really like big transaction, big bulk transactions that don't need to have speed. They just need to have reliability. And then on top of that, you have like banking settlement layers. And then on top of that, you have what we use today, which is just kind of credit card payments. So,
Hmm.
but it is a tiered approach that has different kind of give and takes and requirements. And I really love how you put it that Bitcoin, you can build all these layers on top of it, and maybe the others, maybe there are experiments that they can fail, but Bitcoin will be this sort of reliable rock, this reliable foundation that you can to start with, just put your savings in. But I think Lightning is proving itself to be like every day more and more reliable. There's still, I believe, 5% of transactions that are failing, especially those that are like higher order, like higher amounts payments, just because the network is still not massive. But as we begin to see more bigger players starting to provide liquidity, a lot of these are going to go away. We're still so early, but I think as soon as you have banks starting to run their nodes, and maybe we'll begin to see. This is sort of my personal theory. Is I think we'll start seeing more, whether they're new Bitcoin banks or the traditional banking companies starting to say, okay, you know what, Bitcoin actually is a viable tool for global settlements and global payments. So we're going to start running a node and start creating channels and put in a lot of Bitcoin as liquidity and charge just the routing fees.
Which are much lower than the legacy payment networks, where
Oh
what
yeah,
Jack Mallers calls the boomer network, right? Like he's like,
right.
check you boomers out, 3%,
Yeah,
right? Like, and it's like basically a bunch of phone calls instead of like this instantaneous settlement. And I think one of the important things that people should understand when you say like 5% of transactions fail, that doesn't mean there's money lost. It just means the transaction doesn't go through, and I still have my coins. Like there are some ways
yeah.
you can lose money playing with a Lightning node. I've not lost any. And I'm finding the network to become more and more reliable. There'll be people listening to the audio version of this later today, and they'll literally on an app like Fountain or Breeze be
Mm,
streaming me 1 Satoshi a minute reliably. And
wow.
that's how do you even take the Boomer network and try to compete with that? You're talking a fraction of a penny per minute in a high frequency transactional state through an app that doesn't care who I am and doesn't care. And that's, I want to move on to Geyser because in some ways that's what Geyser, it doesn't really care who is on either side of the transaction, just that both wish to participate and built on that layer. So as a bridge there,
Hmm.
can you just give us like your short version of how the Lightning Network works?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Lightning is a complicated system, much more complicated even than Bitcoin. And I don't claim to be, the main expert. Maybe Stelios, my co-founder, would have been to provide a more high fidelity kind of assessment of it. But my general take is, in the way that I actually visualize it, is a bit like if people created bridges. Like if you consider visualize that if you hold Bitcoin, and what Bitcoin is people holding these assets. It's not entirely correct because you don't actually holding anything. But if you imagine holding this asset, and then what you do with Lightning is you shake hands with someone, and that's creating a channel. And if everyone's shaking both hands with different people, you create this network, and that's essentially what Lightning is. Is that it's a protocol. It's a communication protocol actually, where people are shaking their hands, and the Bitcoin are allowed to flow from person to person. in a way that you don't actually need to do that in a permission type of way. People just the Bitcoin just kind of flow from person to person, and that's essentially using a smart contract that locks in Bitcoin between two parties. So what you actually are transacting are are actual Bitcoin that you can redeem, and so there is no IOU, there is no like trust involved. It's an incredibly powerful system that it's just a very smart tool. Like, Bitcoin is an incredible burst of genius. Lightning is also an incredibly powerful, creative way, a roundabout way of making it so that you can use Bitcoin to pay, but with microtransactions, super low fees, and instant settlements.
And I think, I've had people tell me things like, well, Lightning is fractional reserve for Bitcoin. And I'm like, I don't want to be offensive, but either you're ignorant or you're lying.
Yeah.
And you need to let me know which one it is. Because if it's ignorance, we can explain it. And if you're lying, then we need to end the conversation, because we don't make more Bitcoin with Lightning. That's not how it works. And anybody who's ever put themselves through the learning curve pain of running a node and like, okay, I've opened this channel. Well, now can I send? Well, you can send, but so I can receive. Well, no, not until you send. Well, why not? Well, all the liquidity is on your side of the channel. Like, once you do it, you're like, okay, well, there's no way this doesn't even compare to some sort of fractional reserve thing. And you start figuring out loop outs. And I don't want to get too technical today, but like when I started running a node, I had my web admin that does all the web admin for my show kind of handhold me through it. And once you do it, you're like, oh, I get it. But until you do it, it doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. I
totally
agree. And it's the same with Bitcoin, right? Yeah. It's like only once you get your wallet and understand how the hell this works, then that you can really say, okay, wow, I understand now.
Yeah. When you realize, okay, these 12 words secure my Bitcoin, that's my Bitcoin. And I think the hardest thing that people understand is because they'll start using a software wallet like Exodus or what have you. And then they're like, so my Bitcoin's in Exodus. No. Your Bitcoin's in blockchain. You control it, and Exodus is a GUI, right? It's a user interface, and you could take those 12 words and put them in a totally different wallet and control your Bitcoin from that wallet. You can, and once that finally clicks, I own this by possessing knowledge and knowledge alone. I could get on a plane with my last clothes that I owned, have the government strip everything from me, get off a plane in another place, download a piece of software. If I have those 12 words somewhere I can get to them or memorized, I can stick those 12 words in, and that wealth cannot be taken from me. I have sovereignty on that wealth. Click. And I think Lightning, you have to take like this, like you have to have that the Bitcoin click first. It's like a puzzle, right? You have to put the base together, and then you can install layer 2, right? And install it mentally as well.
Absolutely.
So let's get into Geyser. I'm going to bring up right now a screenshot, or not a screenshot, actually your page, Geyser.fund, in just a second. But what is Geyser and how does it work?
Yeah, good question. So Geyser is what we call a Lightning native Bitcoin crowdfunding platform. And I guess to kind of make that point a bit clear, Geyser is essentially a platform that allows anyone, anywhere, to fund projects that are related to Bitcoin. So at the moment, Geyser is still in a pilot phase, so you are not yet able to create a campaign. We have to sort of do that for you initially, but we're currently building a creation flow so that anyone will be able to use Geyser in a permissionless sort of way. And what you see here are all Bitcoin related initiatives. So we want to, anyone will be able to create crowdfunding campaigns, no matter your beliefs. We still are very much about freedom of speech, and if you want to raise campaigns for anything, we'll be open to that. But we will always keep the Geyser front page to be focused on Bitcoin initiatives. So what you see here are Bitcoin education projects, people doing car racing, doing movies and documentaries, orange pilling people in different parts of the world. Even have an anonymous as a metallic music, heavy metal music focused on Bitcoin. And this is Geyser Grant. So essentially, we have partnered with with actually is now actually an anonymous Bitcoiner who's donated 3 Bitcoin for us to give out to Bitcoin to Geyser campaigns, and also beyond Geyser campaigns. So any applicant that is doing and building stuff on top of Bitcoin. So actually, we just closed it around 10 days ago, and we received 80 applications in just 1 month. And so these are 80 people that are doing things for Bitcoin education, Bitcoin culture, meaning movies, documentaries, etc., and also Bitcoin builders. And so I think to really understand what we're doing here is, I guess, for the first step, think of Kickstarter, right? But on Kickstarter, you cannot do two key things. The first thing is you cannot create a campaign from, say, Argentina or from Brazil or from the Philippines. So Geyser, because we are building this permissionless, borderless monetary system, we go from day one to being global. We don't need to open a bank account in Australia. Like it just works anywhere, right? Obviously, we need to be careful with kind of sanctioned countries, but apart from that, we can operate anywhere. And then secondly, to fund a project on Kickstarter, you need to go on Kickstarter.com and fund from there. Whereas with Geyser, because it's again an open network, you can fund Geyser campaigns from anywhere. So to bring back to the example that you said, Red, that there may be people on Fountain boosting your podcast. Well, we've integrated with Fountain in a permissionless way. We didn't ask Fountain, can we do this? We just did it. And what happens is, like, we have our own Geyser podcast, and when people go on our podcast and listen to it and boost it, all the Satoshis, 95% of the Satoshis go to the person's campaign.
Oh,
right. And that's using Lightning addresses and things like that. And so we get this into this place where it's just this interoperable, it's this interoperable system where you can fund from anywhere. And so just to give a few more examples, you have podcasting that we're integrated with. So if you're in Breeze or Fountain, you can fund Geyser projects from there. You can also fund from Twitter and Facebook, because now what we have is we have static Lightning addresses using this protocol called LNURL, so that actually you have this QR code that you can paste on Twitter that people can fund from, and that payment will be viewed on Geyser, will go to the campaign, right? So again, you don't need to come to Geyser. You can fund from anywhere. And as long as you use that Lightning address and that QR code, all those transactions will be supporting a project, a campaign.
As long as the sender's using a Lightning wallet that supports LNURL or what have you. Like if you're using Wallet of Satoshi,
Exactly.
no problem. You can
Exactly.
send anywhere. My Lightning address for my Wallet of Satoshi is beefy Persian 37. Wallet of Satoshi.com. And I'm like, I can like reapply to get a different. I'm like, no, I'm gonna run with that, man.
Yeah. Especially if you're a carnivore, the beefy one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's amazing. Like what you just said there, we just did a roundtable with Guy Swan and Brian Harrington from Choice and from Bitcoin Audible about Layer 3 tech. And one of the things we came away with was, and the two of them were just mesmerized, honestly, that I was like, I got you two big names on the podcast. I'm going to give you both 20% of all boosts and streams in perpetuity for that one episode, though. And I showed them how I could do it in in Fountain in like 2 minutes. Yep. Like either you're in Fountain and I use your username, or you give me your pub key. Either way, and boom, it's done. And what I said is, if you had a podcast, my podcast is a pretty big podcast, and you had a guest on that you would vouch for and say, like, this guy's house burned down or something. Could be anything, right? Could be fundraising like you're talking about for a project, or it could be some charitable case or anything like that. You could just literally say, I'm going to just push everything from this episode to them. They don't need to be a podcaster. They could just set up an account with, let's say, Fountain, and they have a wallet, and it just goes there. And the beauty of that, though, is, and I'm sure this works for you guys too, unless I'm running the node, maybe I have a small transaction fee, but in the end, I'm out of the way. Like, I'm not sitting like GoFundMe, and I have to account for the money in and the money out. I didn't touch the money that you sent to Bill It just went to Phil. Maybe I charged a node fee or something.
Right. Yeah, it's spectacular. I believe they use this thing called a TLV, which is essentially within the podcasting 2.0 system that exists within a Lightning. It's essentially a Lightning improvement proposal that worked that was made specifically for the podcasting solution. And it's incredibly powerful. And I think we'll probably end up building something similar, but for crowdfunding essentially. But before I get there, I think that there's a third. So I mentioned the key point being kind of really borderlessness, right? Geographic borderlessness, but also platform borderlessness. You can fund from any platform, right? And thirdly, well, there's the important element of obviously of censorship. So obviously, as we've seen with the Canadian truckers last year, there is a very, I mean, every funds that you receive on this platform are going to be potentially seized, and they're not really your funds, right? So with Geyser, our Bitcoin ethos pushes us to ensure that we give that option when people really want it. We find that most projects have absolutely just are very don't have any particular revolutionary intentions, but even then, it's still very important for us to provide that optionality. Now so moving forward, currently the way we work is that we use Voltage, was a non-custodial solution working on the cloud, but going forward, we'll allow people to connect their own node, but also we will provide a custodial solution, because we found just from research and talking to our users that a lot of people just are not running their nodes, and they just want to make it really easy for them, and they just want to do a small Kickstarter. So why not do that? So we will provide a custodial solution that is cheaper as well, and really easy to set up, because part of our mission at Geyser is making this a tool that is 10x the user experience of say Kickstarter. And so to challenge that, we do want to make that like the entryway, right, for people to explore more about Bitcoin. So providing also that as a solution, the custodial solution. But obviously,
let me hold you there a second, because that's a word that people see as a bad word, and I think it's depending on how it's applied, which is custodial versus non-custodial.
Yeah.
When it comes to holding your wealth in Bitcoin long term, yeah, baby, you want as much self-custody as you can. Gold standard would be you run your own node and you got a hardware wallet, right? But at least you want to be in a non-custodial wallet situation.
Right.
When it comes to certain other things, though, like running something on a platform, if somebody would say to me, are you holding your Bitcoin in Lightning form in a non-custodial way? I would say yes, because I'm running my own node, but no, because there's always $100 or so in Wallet of Satoshi, because I use it to loop my equity around in a circle by opening a channel with them. And because at any given time, there'll be 10,000 to 100,000 sats in Fountain until I extract it. So if you're doing fundraising, having that fundraising in that situation, because you don't want to run a node, like a lot of your people right now, they are Bitcoin projects. So it's probably not something that's that challenging for them. But as you expand and somebody's like saying, I want to put in a greenhouse in an urban center and provide jobs for veterans. Like that person might not have, they might understand Bitcoin. They might know how to convert it to dollars. They might know how to pay bills with it. But that person probably shouldn't expend resources trying to balance liquidity to receive donations. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And part of that reason is that we just, like, the technology isn't there yet.
Yeah.
Unless you're running your node, there isn't at the moment a viable, cheap solution for creating non-custodial wallets for every user on a platform. The closest thing you can get is what Voltage provides, which is a great solution, but it is still a little bit expensive. So if you want to create a project and you only get like $10, you might have to pay the $10 to run that node for you. And
I
you just
run
don't
a Voltage
need to
node
create,
because it was like I thought Voltage was a great way to learn, so I run one. It costs me about $12 a month. So if I'm not doing at least $12 in business, I'm paying to do my thing, right? And
Right.
I think and I did it because it was like I have a start 9 node and I've got a voltage node, and it's letting me learn. So to me, I'm like paying tuition. But if I'm trying to run a going concern, I'm trying to get something off the ground. I don't have the time, and it doesn't make the financial sense. The other thing with the custody thing is, I think that the fact that you can do a thing often means that you won't have to. So if an entity knows that I can take custody at any time and teleport it across the world, then I'm less likely to be attacked. It's like, I've got a nuclear button. I prefer not to use it. I would like to work with you. I would like to do as much as I can to comply with what I think is reasonable. But if you force me, all I have to do is withdraw. And I can withdraw out of my own node on Lightning, or I can withdraw back on chain. And then I can manage my funds from there. So I don't think this is a problem. I think that what you're describing is a solution for a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't participate, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we're paying very close attention, and as soon as more non-custodial, like easy to use tools come about, which I think they will very soon, we'll definitely jump on board as well.
I'm interested as to how you think that might work, because I can't get my head around a cheap, easy. Like if I set up a Bitcoin wallet, I don't really have to do anything.
Yeah, so
right?
It wouldn't be like the full thing, right? It wouldn't be like like voltage, which is actually going all the way as far out in this at the end of the spectrum in terms of making every user into giving them a node to set up, right? So you'd have actually something a little bit more nuanced, where maybe there is still a platform that provides a wallet, but your wallet. So your wallet will be a non-custodial wallet on their node. So they're still running the node, but they don't have ownership of the funds. So what you have now on Fountain is literally you're just an entry in a database, right? They're totally custodial. They can take your money if they wanted to. Of course they won't do that, but right. But this alternative would be essentially a bit like that. But they would need, this is some sort of like multi-sig type of thing going on, where you need to provide a signature for those funds to be moved around,
or maybe to be taken off the node, but like it would have to be able to move, because that is how the liquidity pool is formed, right? But so maybe it could be bounced around the channel but not leave the node, something like that. I mean, would you say, like, compared to web hosting, you've got shared hosting, and then you've got, like, I run a dedicated server for my show, and in the between there's something like virtual private server, where like you're on a shared server but you're partitioned from everybody else. Like, would that be a decent analogy?
Yeah, you're definitely partitioned, but I think there's something else going on at the encryption level, where you say, I think one key is stored in your on your mobile device or something, or in your app, or in user app. So that's the only thing that the company has, and then they give you the second key that essentially is your password or whatever that you use to sign transactions. Again, I'm not sure about it yet. It's still being built. I know a few companies are working on it, but we'll see when it comes out. But I think there's something probably a little bit more more like encryption based. Whether it's on a multi-sig or not, I'm not sure, but something like that.
So right now, like almost all your projects, or I think all your projects, are like Bitcoin Lightning initiatives in some way, like Bitcoin racing or what have you. You guys do want to be like the Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, like of all things eventually, right? Like that, like you don't want to like say, oh, we don't believe in what you're doing, so you can't use our platform.
Yeah, we want to try to be as open as possible, and I think that's sort of how we win, right? We don't just we don't censor, like we want to kind of get out of the way, like as long as people don't like do projects that are harmful, abusive, in which case we will, due to regulations, have to push them down. At the end of the day, we are a company. If you want to run your Ethereum,
would be if somebody wanted a Kickstarter for a child porn movie, no, you can't do that, right? Like
exactly, yeah. And so Geyser really becomes a platform for people for anyone to start their projects in an initiative. again, kind of talking about the censorship level, there's two key things when you think about censorship, right? The first thing is the money, and the second is the data, the deplatforming, right? So if you look at the first one, Bitcoin has already enabled censorship-resistant crowdfunding. We think Lightning will be the main layer on which most of our economy will operate. So we want to focus on Lightning. It's just that, so currently we're focusing on custody, but we know that non-custodial solutions are coming to Lightning. So I think the money piece of censorship resistance is being covered, or is about to be covered pretty much. So essentially we become a platform for enabling essentially to do crowdfunding that cannot be, where funds cannot be freezed, and that's incredibly powerful.
Yes,
but then there's still the problem of the data of the project, right? And here what I mean is you create a project, and then the government comes to us and say, shut this project down. Well, we'll be able to say we cannot freeze the funds because we don't own them, but we still have to shut them down. So how do you prevent that? Well, the key answer to that is you can't really prevent it, because we are a company, we are liable, and therefore we can't really do much about it. But what we can do is work on a protocol layer, right? So there's these two things. There's platforms and there are protocols. Platforms are profit-centered. They are also very easy to shut down. They're single points of failures. But then protocols are non-profit oriented, and they are open. They're standards that anyone can use and operate. And what we've been seeing in the last few years is that there's a plethora of distributed database systems, these protocols that essentially organize data in a way that is not centralized, that are incredibly powerful. So we've seen a few with Nostra. Nostr has come out, has emerged recently as a very powerful tool. There's IPFS. There are these other ones called goodness, what Synonym is working on with slash tags, and Hypercore, that again are like these distributed databases that allow us to essentially build on this. I guess how we can visualize it is a bit like the mycelium running underground, where you can tap into what other people's databases are. So imagine if you're sending a tweet and you could read it from Facebook. That's a type of thing that you could enable through a distributed database. It's just interoperable data. Bitcoin is interoperable money, but the protocol layer in the distributed data sense enables distributed information. And so what that would allow us to do is say, again, the government comes to us and say, hey, we don't like this project about, I don't know, like, these protests, right?
Yeah.
We'll say, okay, we'll shut it down because we kind of have to. But
you're just kind of shoving it off on a product. It's still there. It's just not visible on your.
It's just not visible on Geyser. So anyone else, any other platform based anywhere else, could pull the data, all of the data, and visualize. So you get this game of guacamole where you're trying to shut it down and it keeps on popping up everywhere. And I think this is where you wanna get to.
I think our weakness right now is these little boxes. And for those that are on the audio, I'm holding up my phone, right? Like this is because we run an app, and we saw the big takedown of Parler by big media during the election, and a coordinated attack where AWS pulled their hosting, and Google and Apple shut down their apps, and then they were dead. And it took them like 2 months to come back, and they just never got the momentum back. It's a very dangerous thing in social media. If you have a successful platform, for things not to work for any period of time, like all that enthusiasm dies, right?
Right.
Where I think we're heading to a world, and I've said this for a couple of years now, and I think we're getting closer and closer to where people will stop carrying an Apple or a Google anything. They're going to carry a small communication personal computer, which is what this is, without these overlords controlling it. And Then you have like the open source app market, and then we're down to that again, like that protocol layer where somebody that was really smart could just say, oh, they got deplatformed, I'm going to create an app that will just regenerate them, like squishing like if you ever were a kid, you squish an ant and you're sure you killed it, and the ant's just like, and it just starts going again, like a Terminator, right? Like you can destroy it, but it's still there. And if that person receiving the funds is receiving to their own node, you pushing them on the platform is an inconvenience, but it's not seizing their funds. Those funds are gone. Bill and Debbie and Tommy already sent those Satoshis. They're gone. You got to go deal with that person who's probably in another jurisdiction, if you know who they are.
Yeah, and this is where you want to be, right? You want to live in a system that is anti-fragile. And I think Nassim Taleb, now an outcast in the Bitcoin space,
he did it to himself.
He wrote the beautiful analogy of the Hydra. Like the anti-fragility is this idea that the more you fall, the stronger you get. Well, the Hydra is this thing. Like you chop off the head of a Hydra, which has 3 heads. Every time you chop it off, 2 more sprout out, right? And you want the system of anti-fragility embedded in a system, because that way, that's how you get stronger. And so decentralization here becomes important based on how, essentially the more you're willing, the more you're wanting to chop heads off, the more heads are going to be sprouting. So you do want to get to this point where the legal system is this powerful system that's meant to be supporting us, like the Constitution, right? It's meant to actually support our rights. I'm saying this just because I had a conversation about this recently, but the Constitution protects our rights, right? But technology offers us a solution, an alternative legal structure that is really grounded on physics, that can allow us to live and abide by these principles of independence and self-sovereignty. And so this is our main toolkit to contrast against authoritarianism and tyranny all around the world.
Gotcha, man. So it occurs to me that there are a lot of people out there like myself. I'm part of a pretty small Telegram group, and we're bouncing around ideas all the time. And some of us actually have some funding. We could certainly use more. And some of us have some pretty killer app ideas that we would like to develop. The problem is I would never go out and say, I need $25,000 to develop this app, because I don't know, right? I'm not a coder. I can't code. I know I can spec what I want and spec how I want it to work. Do you guys ever see yourselves as having sort of that kind of thing too, like a way that people can connect with, like this group or this person has developed apps in the past and their customers are happy, right? Or is that like something that could be maybe federated to somebody else takes on that role? Because I would totally use my reach, my minor celebrity, call it whatever you want, to push to develop something. But then I have to feel like the people that contribute those funds, they're going to get the thing that I promised. And right now, I could say it's going to cost 25 grand to do it. Maybe it's going to cost 100. Maybe it's going to cost 50. I have no way of pricing layer 3 app development. I don't have any idea, but I damn well know what I wanted to do, at least as a Gen 1 platform. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Really good question. I guess to reframe the question is, how can this become a more general purpose crowdfunding / crowdsourcing tool, right? How does it become a place for people to come together as communities to get shit done, right?
Yeah.
And rather than, that's 100% spot on, and it's exactly the type of problems that we want to solve. So if you look at crowdfunding platforms today, like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, every single crowdfunding platform, what it is just a static page with maybe some transaction numbers, a number of people that have funded, and comments. That's pretty much it. And what we're playing with at Geyser at the moment is this idea that what if we just separated those two things out? So what you'd get is actually this high-level entity of the project, right? Which is I want to build this cool web system, right? And then separated from that are what we call posts. It's like you want to write an article about it, but then you have another idea and you want to write another article about it. Then maybe you have an update, and maybe you get featured in a podcast and you want to add your podcast, and maybe you want to shoot a video about that idea and you shoot a video. And every time you create content, you create potentially much more engagement. You create these like powerful tools for people to, okay, well, like I want to fund this idea just because there's a lot more content. But then you also can do more things. Like you can, integrate ways for people to communicate with each other. You can like you said, like maybe people have questions, maybe people want us to contribute in different ways, right? All of that, like essentially something that we're working on. Essentially making Geyser not into like a standard, like static pay platform for crowdfunding, but really a dynamic place where people can engage, write content, and try to crowdfund and crowdsource these ideas that can then become reality. Because a lot of it is, like you say, it's like communication. It's getting people together. It's not just the money. Like the money is like an outcome, but then people want to actually, even those that are funding, want to feel part of something. Yeah, and actually something else that we also have at the moment already are rewards. So you're not just funding just to donate, but you're funding to receive something back. Yeah, exactly. And that creates a lot more engagement, a lot more like reciprocity in the system. So, for example, I think if you fund the Bitcoin racing car, above a certain amount, you can go to the races yourself. You can get a T-shirt and jumper and all sorts of other perks, kind of thing.
If you were doing a paid app, maybe your early adopters get lifetime access to the paid app for free or something like that. Like you could do it's the whole Kickstarter thing. Like the model itself is a brilliant model until you want to do something that they say you're not allowed to do. I want to build an accessory for a firearm, even though it's not a firearm, I can't do it, right? Like,
right.
Even if I can, here it is, I made one in my shop and I want to do this thing. I mean, I remember a guy years before all this stuff started, he made a real simple add-on rear sight for an SKS, which has a terrible sighting system, right? It popped on and all of a sudden you had like it wasn't an M1 Garand, but you had a sight picture like an M1 Garand, and those were like $50. And I'm like, today that would be a great product, and he could probably get a lot more traction with it in the firearms community, but none of these platforms would be available to him. There's nothing illegal about it. There's nothing immoral about it. It can't hurt anybody. A lead ball is just as dangerous as a sight. In fact, the lead ball is probably heavier, hurts you more. And so I see that, but also like when you're talking about like developers and like people like me that would need to find developers, I think we need to not be afraid to reclaim terminology that shitcoiners have ruined and say like we can use that because it's a legitimate thing. Smart contracting, where would it be great if like I hired somebody to do this and then there was like this group of devs, they don't do it. They just can look at it and go, this metric has been met, release this part of the payment. So the payment goes into, and this is where custodial would work better. The payment is sitting here. And because when I way back, I was in network cabling and stuff like that. And we would do big jobs, $1 million jobs. Well, a contractor can't finish the whole job and stay in business. They have to be able to bill out as they go through progress. Well, you and the customer could just go, yeah, we installed 100 cables so far. They're jacked and tested. Okay, that progress billing goes out. When you're talking about developing an app, and it's somebody like me dealing with some coder that's writing code, they can baffle me with bullshit. But if there was like my Jedi Council of coder approval, that maybe they get a few sats every time they say yay or nay. And when you got more than 75% of the Jedi Council to say this metric's been met, that triggers an automatic payout of that much billing. But I retain the code. So if you go away, I can pick somebody else up. I know that's not really what Geyser does, but I can see. No,
that's 100%. Yeah, that's 100% aligned with what we're thinking as well. Like I think what you're kind of suggesting here is with the Jedi Council is that you have this group of people that maybe get to almost through a multi-sig control the
Yeah.
funds, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean that's totally doable. Yeah.
And they, you could set it up to where it's a small amount, because a lot of those guys, like, they want to help projects. They don't need a ton of money, but they would get their little riff for saying yes or no. So they're not incentivized to say yes. They're incentivized to speak the truth, right? Like that would, because monetizing the truth is something I've been trying to figure out as well. Like, how do we monetize truth versus bullshit? Because most marketing and most the media is the monetization of bullshit.
Look, I think just to say something that's really, really important, and it's kind of a hard one. I think the power of technology is that actually it has helped us with time to get rid of the bullshit. It has incentivized, it has realigned our incentives to cooperate. And so we think Geyser, and like this is what the internet did, right? Like, first of all, the market did it, right, through just pricing. The fact that prices became homogenized, you don't have to go to the butcher and he would, just kind of cheat you, because you could go to the other marketplace and say, hey, it's cheaper over here. So the kind of standardizing prices has helped. Just the market itself has done that. Then the revolution with the internet. Well, actually, even before that, like, think about the printing press, right? The printing press has standardized as the version of sacred scripts, and then, like, the Bible. What does that do? That, like, homogenizes and takes away the potential for forgery and like omissions and stuff like that, right? And then the internet puts us all together in this similar place, and gets us to kind of collaborate on the same endeavors. And so and Bitcoin in a similar way, like, people say, like, what's the most powerful force, right? What is the most important thing to enable success? Well, it's reputation, especially in the context of the online ecosystem. So this is where on Geyser, and I think more is being built on this other protocol layer, but we can leverage reputation. So sure, you get paid, you could run away with the money, but what's in your interest? Like, is it really to run away with the money, or is it to actually build that thing that you wanted to do? And this is, so far we have had no, like, defaults. I think there was one person that had a trouble with the developer leaving the project, but he's still trying to get it done. And so Geyser, we don't want to, like, Kickstarter, the way that they solved it is, like, people have 1 month to make all that money. If they don't achieve the goal, the funds go back to the user, to the senders, right? And so they want to the way tackling it is, people get all the money, and then once they get the money, they actually implement that project much more effectively. With us, we want to create a much more dialogic system where people come together. People are not just funding, they're supporting, they're asking questions, they are maybe even helping to build it, like you suggested. And so that creates a much more close-knit system. It creates communities where things are done, and not just like a place where you just send the money and get the thing back. And with that tight-knit community, I think we'll start seeing cooperation emerge, almost like as a consequence of that tight-knit community that is being created.
Yeah, because I mean, the vision has to include a network effect. Because if right now I had an initiative I wanted to do, I can get a WordPress plugin, I can throw it on my site, and I can make it work just like Kickstarter. I can put riffs and bonuses and all that, and I can accept Bitcoin, I can accept Visa, I can accept MasterCard, I can accept Strike, I can accept whatever I want, and I can run that. So then why would I give any money at all to Kickstarter? The reason I would do it is, one, I don't know how to do what I just said, but that can be solved with YouTube videos in a day if you really want to. If you already know WordPress, a day in YouTube, and you can do that. One of our expert council members, Nicole Sauce, did that for her coffee fundraising. I would go to Kickstarter, GoFundMe, whatever, because I have a belief that once I get traction, I prime the pump, right? Prime the well, I bring my people that I have reach into, and I get exposure on the platform. I will get people that will support what I'm doing who'd not have known about me without the network. So the network has to grow to create that network effect. And the more interaction you can create between people on the network, whether they're donors, they're builders, they're coders, they're compliance enforcement, right? Like imagine an entity that does its own compliance enforcement. That would be that Jedi, I don't know if that's the right term for it, lack of a better term. You're never wrong for echoing Star Wars, right? Like the Jedi Council of coders, like it ensures its own compliance, and the compliance isn't, this is what we want you to do. It's, you're doing what you said you would do. Like, do what you say and say what you do. Like that's legitimate compliance, because if you've agreed to back my project, I don't think it's anybody else's business that they don't like what I'm doing, as long as I'm not, I'm not building a ray gun to destroy planet Earth or something like that, right? Like, as long as what I'm doing is something that it's basically not harming another person, that's between us. But it is an issue if you've given me money to do it, and I'm off buying margaritas on the beach with it. That's not cool, right? So if you can create inbound compliance and expand the network effect, because I think all these layer 3 apps, the thing that is going to kill the non-layered apps, the old world, it's hard to believe that smartphone apps are now in a legacy environment, but they are. Yeah. Is that if you have the network effect and you have monetary incentivization, then every app on your phone is either going to adopt it or be extincted. Because I've talked about this idea for a while, and one of the guys here in the chat actually wants to build it, is like a Waze app that is incentivized the way Fountain is. So Waze is a traffic app, you get directions, right? Yeah. But the cool thing about Waze is, like, I was hooking ass on my way back from Tennessee to Texas during my last trip, and I'm doing like 90, and all of a sudden a thing pops up on Waze, and it's little police lights, and it's like cop ahead running radar. So you slow down. Well, that's a great app. But how does Waze make money? By collecting my data and selling it to companies, right? Or the government. Right. But if this was an independent, true app, and you ratted that cop out to me, I'm probably like, give that dude 100,000 Satoshis right now, because you just saved me a contact and a ticket and insurance. So that app would work better. So if you build a app, platform, protocol, call it what you want, that enables people to do crowdfunding and is self-policing and incentivizes everybody, then why would I use your legacy crap like Kickstarter?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, let's run that on Geyser when we're ready. Like the idea of the Waze app. That's brilliant. And yeah, we'll have to still figure out some of these. I think you mentioned some good points, and which led me to think about some other ideas. Like, if you're funding, we could potentially, give the option to hold those funds, right, until that product is actually released, and then people get to decide and judge the person, and maybe. If like 70% of the funders, say that it was a good product or are happy or satisfied, then the funds go to the person, right? Yeah. These types of things that could be done. And even if the funds do go to the person, you still get to rate them, right? And so again, reputation becomes so powerful.
See,
because it aligns us.
Strong. Think about how strong this is, though, what you're saying, compared to something like Kickstarter, we shall decide. You could have this set up to where the person building the project offered that as an incentive. We will use 40% of this as the build, and then the 60% will be determined, and they can say what percentage of the customer has to be happy. And then it's a contract. You made we didn't do anything. All we did at Geyser was we just laid out the tools for you to create your contract with your donors and your means of enforcement. And the contract don't care, right? Like we used to say in construction, the contract was the Bible. If I had a disagreement with a client about, there's a change order here, and this is how much it's going to cost, we might disagree. You said this, like, get the contract out, and then either one of us, whichever one of us was wrong, we read it in the contract. Oh, okay. It was done. Like, there's no argument. But if it's an electronic contract, it does it by itself. I can't help you with your unhappiness. Maybe you need, maybe you get a chance to go back and say, well, let us make you happy, right?
So when you say electronic contract, do you mean the contract to, do you mean like the incentives within the app, or do you mean the actual like,
I mean, like we were talking about holding the
terms and
payout,
conditions? Right.
like holding the payout, right? So the reason I would do funding to build an app is I don't have enough funding to build the app out of pocket.
Yeah.
But if I do it, I should be able to raise enough funding that there's some profit in it. Maybe I need a piece of it now, and then I can take the balance later. But
Right.
the contract
Yeah.
I'm talking about would be what you said, like if 70% of the backers say they're happy, then you get the rest of your money. What I'm saying is basically like a slider on the thing when I'm setting up my project. My threshold for payout is 80%. My threshold for payout is 60%. My and then the donor literally sees, the backer, the funder literally sees, this is the skin I'm putting in the game. And then that contract is not really Geyser enforcement.
It's a sort of smart contract.
It's on the fly smart contract that executes itself.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. We'd have to, I think there's definitely a lot of, we're still a little bit early for that.
We need a Geyser campaign to develop that for Geyser.
Let's do it.
Because that's one thing I want to say something on behalf of all you guys building this stuff right now. There's a lot of people in our space that they try an app or something and maybe it doesn't work perfectly right away or whatever. Guys, all of these people I've talked to, back channel and on air, they're all small teams. They're working their freaking asses off, and they're not building a new widget. They're building something that never existed before. And so we can throw all these ideas at them. Don't expect them to like next week go, here you go. That's not how this works, man. And I have incredible respect for all of you guys developing tech like this, because it is, Star Wars, let's go to Star Trek, where no man has gone before, right? Like you're doing things that have never been done before in a way they've never been done.
Absolutely. Look, conversations like these are so valuable because they elicit these different new ways of thinking about it. For me, actually, I have a different background. As I said before, I come from the anthropology and economics, so not tech related at all. But I did go, into studying, coding and programming for quite a bit, so that helped. But you're absolutely right. Like building products is like the opposite of doing anthropology. Like it's actually, so anthropology and like understanding users and understanding people is really important to understand what problems they face. And like we all know some big problems that we face today, like the problem of censorship, and so we there's definitely, and like getting user feedback, that's really great for it. But for really developing new products, you actually have to get out of the user's mental model. You have to get out of it, because the user will not know what they really need. So you have to understand, listen to the user very attentively, understanding what their problems are, or what the problems, and the problems they have they may be aware of them, but they may not be aware of them, right? And then you need to build a solution that actually is, like I've said to you before, Kickstarter is actually the static page, right? That is actually a post plus the fund kind of together. You have to get out of that mental model and rebuild based on the kind of the primary constituents of that. And so you gotta think through, like back in history, like, how did that get created? How do you get them out? And how do you recreate something different? And it's a powerful process, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Mick's right here saying, I learned in IT many years back, never ask the client what they want, as they ask what they want to accomplish. I think he was going for that. I think that's the thing. Like, you don't want a drill bit, you want a hole, right? So you come to me for a hole, and I look at the wall and I go, that's going to take a torch, right? And that's what I'm going to put the hole in the wall with. So I think that's.
But you might not need to put a hole in the wall either. Maybe the solution is like a sticker, right? Like you don't even need to dig that hole.
Right? Or maybe it's like the wall's over there. All you had to do was turn around, right? Like, so I think there's a lot of, and then the other side though, is you got all these people with all this super technology mindset, and you guys build a thing and you think, well, everything's in there, but the person trying to use it that didn't build it has trouble finding it or operating it. And so one of the things like I've been doing to try to help the Fountain guys is I'm doing tutorial screenshot videos. This is how you do all these things. And I think it's a very intuitive app, but I've been playing with technology for 40 years. So maybe I pick it up faster. I don't know. And I think the other side of it is people are afraid. Like people are afraid to do a thing because they might break it or something like that once they see it done. So I think the more we can onboard people with, explain it to me like I'm in 7th grade, man, or 5th grade. Like show me exactly paint by numbers how to do it. And because you're building a tech that does a thing that a person doesn't even know can be done. So they can't operate it, not because it's hard, but because they're not even, their mind's not there. So like, I've done videos and I'm like, why am I doing this video? This is so simple. If you can send an email, you can do this. And then I'll get a ton of emails saying, dude, thanks for that video. And it was just because they saw somebody do it and they're like, oh, it's okay to do it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's like you said, like, I feel like at the early days of the internet, people were like, what is an email for? Right. And it's like, there's gonna be a lot of training. We're still early. We have a lot of, but as soon as we show the value and the impact, people will jump on board.
I remember Good Morning America in the early 90s. And they were like all these airheads and they're like, so exactly what is internet? And what is that at symbol? Like, stuff like that. Like it was like this foreign thing that now everybody uses. And I think like we're not in an early adoption phase. We're in a pre-adoption because we're in a creation stage. The stuff that's going to be adopted in the next 5 years can't be early adopted because it's not here yet. Like we're adopting the alpha, not the beta product. We're adopting the alpha as adopters. And you're pioneers, you get some arrows in the back. One reason I really think this is all really important, though, is what I see coming. You keep mentioning your background in economics. I see coming eventually from the state, and it'll be different flavors of it around the world in different nations. In the U.S., it actually might be some sort of stable coin pulled into FDIC. In China, it'll be a pure CBDC, central bank digital currency. And I think that we need to do almost everything with Satoshis because it's the only way that we can fight this. Like Jim Rogers came out recently, and I don't think he knows jack crap about crypto anyway. He's one of those old, he's like a Peter Schiff. But he said, be careful investing in crypto because eventually the government will control it. Well, I think there's a lot of cryptos the government could control. I don't think that's necessarily wrong in of itself, but you aren't controlling the Bitcoin blockchain. You're not doing it. It's not happening. There's no magic switch. Somebody would have thrown it by now, right? Like, so how do you think what you're doing and what other Bitcoin-only companies are doing relates to the threat of central bank digital currencies?
Good question. I mean, not much, I'd say. No, I mean, CBDCs are a bit of a different beast from Bitcoin. I guess how you can relate it is that we're doing something very different, right? We're building on this immutable platform of Bitcoin that cannot be censored, that is this bearer instrument that cannot be inflated, that cannot be censored, that cannot be seized. These are the key 3 components of Bitcoin. So I think CBDCs are a real possibility, and I'm sure we will see countries going that way, other countries going other ways. I believe there's actually an experiment now in Jamaica. I think they have a CBDC in place in Jamaica. I had a friend going there to kind of see what was going on. I'd love to see what's happening. The problem with CBDCs is that, well, the first thing I'll probably say about CBDCs is that they will be offered probably as a solution to the current problems. So the current banking system is structured in such a way that the money flows first to the main banks, and then it kind of trickles down through debt to everyone else. Now, as bad of a system as this is, it does prevent this hyperinflationary potential of it. As soon as you create a CBDC, you're creating a line of credit that goes directly from the central bank to each individual user's wallets. And the potential there for misallocation of capital, of censorship, of of hyperinflationary bursts is gigantic. You just need to add another zero, and then boom. You just need to vote for the right person. You just need one politician that will promise you millions in your wallet, and boom, hyperinflation. So the dangers are enormous. And actually, there's a lot of people saying that actually CBDCs are unconstitutional, and I believe it. I think Karl Marx was the person who was saying that he would have liked in the Communist Manifesto to have governments own central bank money, right? And that was back in the day, the gold standard.
Sure.
So that's the world we live in today. But that's like to the power of so much more, because it's like essentially money that can be seized, money that can be inflated at will immediately, and money that can be censored. So it's the exact opposite of Bitcoin. I have another way of...
The censorship's my biggest concern, because it could be censored not just in you can't have your money. It could be censored well, you make $1,000 a week, but you need to spend $300 of it on the kind of food we say you're allowed to buy. You need to spend $150 on your health care, and the individual space credit units, dollars, yen, won, whatever, can literally be earmarked with data in the it's not even really a blockchain, but we'll call it one because that's how people think. It says this dollar, this yen, this won, this whatever can only be spent on this classification of things, and the counterparty can't accept it with that basic data lock on it. And so to me, the reason I actually think this is related is if we can operate in a world outside of the dollar, then they can do whatever they want.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like if I can build a business with backers using pure Satoshis and pay my bills to start my company with Satoshis and accept Satoshis as payment for my product, then go make all the CBDCs you want.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah, and that's why there are a lot of Bitcoiners that are actually pro CBDC, because that's how you get to Bitcoin, right? You get people to realize how messed up the system is and how much they can be censored, and then that's when they realize the true potential of Bitcoin. Because to some extent, the current system,
it's the red nuclear button that if you push it, then this is the result. And the longer you wait to push it, the worse the result gets. Like I've said for years, like I keep getting threatened by YouTube. I get strikes, I get suspended, whatever, but I don't get banned, right? And I'm like, if you banned all the big YouTubers that you say are bad, then we would actually be able to move people off YouTube. If you implement a CBDC that works that way, there's enough brand awareness around Bitcoin right now that people, even if they're not all in yet, they know there's an alternative. And the more that news tightens, the more it's like I need to get my wealth out of fiat. And I've always said, like, people think they're not in fiat because they're in equities, like they own Exxon. Well, what's it denominated in? Mm-hmm. If it's denominated in dollars, you're in fiat, and it's seizable, it's censorable. Like you said, it's inflatable. I can inflate away your equity, right? You can own $100,000 worth of Exxon stock, but if I devalue what it means, and Exxon stock doesn't have to go down.
Yeah.
If I devalue the $100,000 to now being worth $80,000. Effectively, you have $80,000 worth of Exxon stock. And I've devalued your dividend as well. But I can't devalue a Satoshi. It can go up and down with market forces, but you can't make more, so you can't devalue through inflation. Yeah.
No, I see that. I don't know. The world is, the future is very uncertain, but I think that's a pretty accurate attempt at speculation. I think just the idea that countries will try to do these CBDCs, and people start understanding that these are like just all these conditionalities that can be applied to it, right? Just from just pure just direct censorship to, you can only use this for this particular thing. Mm-hmm. That's when people realize this is not money. This is a voucher.
And you don't take Federation credits here.
Right. So actually, if you're interested in this type of thing, there's actually a project on Geyser called Don't Let Them Shackle You. CBDCs, don't let them shackle you. And they're essentially doing a crowdfunding campaign that is focused on marketing the danger and potential evil of CBDCs. So they're going to launch in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, London, Davos, Washington, D.C., and they're going to be showing. Maybe I can drop the link here in the private chat. There you go. Yeah, perfect. And essentially, it's these guys that are passionate about this stuff. They've done a lot of research, and they know how dangerous CBDCs are, and how they're potentially authoritarian and anti-human rights, essentially plan and pro censorship. And so they're just getting these funds to sponsor this marketing campaign. And I think they've partnered with a pretty big design and advertising agency. Oh, yeah, 10K advertising. And yeah, they've got these really slick posters, and just really to communicate the power of like the dangers of that.
Wow, this is well done.
Yeah,
and it's just an awareness.
So this has like you've reached your daily quota of meat. Like imagine being told that that's the type of thing that can be done, right?
You can have more bugs, but you cannot have more meat, right?
Exactly.
You will eat the meat and you will be happy, or you will eat the bugs and you will be happy.
Yeah. Introducing a trickle tax on 401k unrealized gains, no actions required on your part. Yeah, this is a terrifying world.
I'm gonna back this one as soon as we're done. I'm gonna throw in some stats. Hell yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people do need to become aware, and we need to realize like how much power there is, and just there's a reason people that are like I used to be that worked at corporate America in marketing make lots of money, because marketing works, because marketing's powerful.
It is.
And
yeah,
people believe a thing is real when they see it in marketing collateral. It's really strange, but you can tell your brother about something over and over and over and over again, and he doesn't believe it. But if he sees it on a billboard or a race car, well, now I might not agree with it, but it exists because it was in this space.
Yeah.
And there's people that have worked very hard for 100 years to make it that way. And instead of fight it, let's grab it. Let's put the canoe in the stream and let's go with it, man. Let's own it. So tell people how they can learn more. And like, I think the way it works right now, from what you said, is if somebody wants to do an initiative, they kind of fill out a form, and you guys have to kind of set it up for them. And there probably is some limitations right now. The size of your team, like you probably don't want too many things running at once because you got to keep up with everything. But how do people back projects, set up projects, find out more?
So backing project is super easy. Just go on Geyser, look at any projects you like, and you can just fund directly. You don't even need to log in. It's like you can fund anonymously. Creating a project, you have to go on Geyser, click on the launch button on the top, and there you can just tell us a little bit more about it, and we'll get back in touch. But we do have like around 100 projects that are waiting to launch on Geyser. But I mean, we're happy to take a look. We're trying to also prioritize things that we feel are very strong, have a strong impact for Bitcoin. But the main issue is we are a very small team, only like two developers, and so we're trying to put most of our energy into actually building the creation flow so that anyone can create a crowdfunding platform. So at the moment, we're only releasing one project per week so that we can kind of keep engagement going, but also that gives us enough time to actually build what's coming next. So yeah, find us on Twitter. We're most active at Geyser Fund, or on our website at geyser.fund. And keep an eye out. I'm Mick-14 on Twitter, and we're quite active mainly on Twitter. And I think the next few months you're gonna see some big changes. So looking forward to hear. Always feedback is always welcome.
So in kind of putting my money where my mouth is, we can talk offline as soon as we wrap up, which we're about to do. And if I get the username for who owns the Geyser side over on Fountain, I'm going to do a split off this podcast for all boosts and streams that come in for this episode with you guys, and we'll get that set up. And then
you can also stream it to the crowdfunding campaign that you mentioned.
Okay.
We could also do that, or to Geyser as well. Up to you.
Okay, we'll take that up as soon as we sign off here. I just need a username and know where you want to go, and so I'm going to do a split for this particular episode on all streams and boosts. And next up, as far as Mick's links that he gave you there, their Twitter and his Twitter personally, and Geyser and all of that good stuff. I have that all in the notes. It's already in the notes that will go up for the audio version, which will be live about 30 to 40 minutes after we sign off on our live stream today. So if you missed anything, just go to the survivalpodcast.com or the bitcoinbreakout.com. Either way, the episodes are on both streams, and you can get all that information there. And dude, thank you. This was an incredible discussion. I continue to reach out to people like yourself that are building these layer 3 apps. I don't necessarily need, the people that are big names in Bitcoin. I want the people building next gen tech, because this is where all the excitement is. If people want to get rich with Bitcoin or build wealth with Bitcoin, formula is simple. Buy Bitcoin, put it in cold storage, and put yourself in the coma so you don't do something stupid like sell it. Like that's DCAN and stack, right? But if you want to like change the world, then this is the stuff that we need to be talking about, because there's been this big argument, means of exchange or store of value. You can't have a store of you can't have a means of exchange until it becomes a store of value. Because if it's not a store of value, what the hell is a means of exchange? You might as well use fiat, right? It just means whatever it's worth today. But if we build a true long-term store of value, then people think very carefully about how they spend every Satoshi. And what I've started to see is I've been building and working with things like you guys, Fountain, the Fold app, etc. I start to think differently. Like, if I'm going to buy this glass, well, how many Satoshis is that? Do I really want to spend this money on this thing, or do I want to invest it in myself, or do I want to invest it in a cause? So I think this is the future of Bitcoin, and it's, we kind of beat up on the alts a little bit, but I don't think it's something that they can compete with, because the only selling point that like all of these forks of Bitcoin have ever had is it's faster and cheaper. Well, now it's not, and it's not able to do the things we're talking about. It's not able to stream 1 or 2 sats a minute to your favorite podcast, or it's not being able to pay 3 parties when an instantaneous split. And it's not being made better every day by a guy that works for MIT and a guy in a closet and a guy in a garage, all making it better at the same time. And so, dude, thank you for being a pioneer here, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you guys. Really appreciated the chat, and look forward to coming back anytime soon.
Absolutely, man.
Good stuff.